ahead. uh, awesome. Look, it's great to be here. I'm here at our BBM Food Bank. Look, I guess I'll take you for a tour around a little bit later, but the title of my talk, and we done this so long ago, way before lockdown, was my 4 tips to a healthy lifestyle. But I want to really talk about, my journey of where I come from, and in the hope that those out there watching can be inspired by our journey. And then I'll finish with the mahi that we're doing at the moment with BBM Motivation. So I'll start back from the beginning. I was born into a gang family. My father was the president of a gang called the Mongrel Mob, the Auckland chapter. He was the president. I was born into, basically I was born into a life of crime, and lots of what I saw as a kid I thought was normal. It wasn't until very later in my life that I understood that, the things that were happening around me weren't normal. And a lot of the things that I was born into is what a lot of our youth at the moment are being born into. So I'm no different, but what I've managed to do is break the cycle. But geez, it took me a long time. My father, he was a bank robber. That was his trade, and that's what he'd done to put food on our table. When I was 5 years old, he got caught for one of the jobs he was doing, and he was in prison for 10 years. Now, at 5, I didn't really understand what was happening. All I remember back on that time is when my father was caught, I just remember the panic in my mum. She came home, and I just remember her panicking and swearing at my father and stressed. And I remember just packing going on, all this packing at our home. My first actual memory of the police was that when they raided our home, I don't even know how old I was. I was only young. I remember it was around Christmas time they raided our house. And I remember that they stole they didn't steal our Christmas presents. They confiscated all of our Christmas presents. That was my first memory. And from that moment on, I hated the police. It's so funny now, just today, we helped police with 200 parcels for families that they're helping in the community. But I'm 41 now. And for 38 years of my life, I hated the police. And it was all stemmed from that first memory of them taking all our Christmas presents. Now, I understand now that back then the reason they did take them was because they were all stolen. And I laugh about it now because I always wondered why some of our wrapped Christmas presents were in the oven and in the wardrobe and under beds, not just under the Christmas tree. But it was a crazy time. I moved to Australia, and I lived over there in Mount Druitt for the next 6 years. And my grandparents were very strict 7-day Adventists, and they raised me as such. And that's the thing, and when I think back now, doing the work that we do, we're out there in the community, and we're going to a lot of emergency housing, going to a lot of transitional housing. And lots of what we see are people that are from generations, our people. And I'm talking, when I say our people, I mean Māori and PI. The people that we're serving are from generations of hopelessness. At least with me, yes, it was hard to break the cycle, but I didn't come from generations of it. My father would come from a good family. He was the one who went off the rails, as well as his younger brother, who was also in the mob and also a bank robber. I always laugh because we always looked forward to his Christmas presents as young kids growing up, and he was more specialized in his trade, and he was he focused on armored trucks, not just banks. So I remember, I'll go off. I diverge. One time, my uncle gave me and my sister Vicky, who's passed away now of cancer. One time, he gave us some coins to go play spacey games. Back in the day when you needed coins to play spaces, the only problem was that bag that he gave us still had ASB written on it. So it was a ASB bag filled with coins that we went down to the city and played spacey games. So that was my background. Things were pretty normal for us, and look, I never used my background as an excuse. And that's what a point that I really want to get across to everyone listening. To not use our background, our skin color, our how rich or poor we are as an excuse. And that's what I say to a lot of kids at-risk youth that we work with. Don't ever use it as an excuse. I came from that background, but I used it as motivation. I hated being poor. I've never met one person that likes it, but man, I hated being poor and I hated not having anything. But I didn't use that as a reason to go follow that path of my father and my uncle and also my mum. My mum was a street kid from Hamilton. I never used it as an excuse. You know, I used it as fuel. I use it as fuel to keep me going and to want to be better, you know. So I studied really hard. I've done really well at school. I passed school C, passed sixth form. My grades in sixth form were actually good enough to get me into university. So I went to uni. It's about all I did. I went there. But everything come unstuck. You know, everything come unstuck in my life when I was 21. My father decided to try his hand at a different kind of trade, and he became a gardener. I always laugh about it now. He's a gardener. He wasn't growing tomatoes. What do you think he was growing? It's you know, he became a marijuana grower. We had warehouses everywhere, filled with hydroponic setups, and this is what he was doing now for his trade and to put food on the table. You know, for those of us that are parents out there listening, we're driven to give our kids material things. You know, everything that we never had, and that's what drove us, and that's what drove my dad and my uncle to do all these things. You know, it's just absolute rubbish. You know, material things, yes, they're nice, of course, but they don't mean anything. They're nice to have, but they don't mean anything. They're not the most important thing. You know, we had a warehouse just down the road from where we are now in Monaco. We had a warehouse filled with cars. You know, we had Range Rovers, Lincolns, Cadillacs, Mercedes, all these things, material things that my dad and my uncle thought that we wanted. You know, what was the point of these warehouses filled with these things when my cousin hung herself in one of those very warehouses? You know, they don't mean anything. All that we needed and all that she needed was my uncle's time and his present, to be present, to be there for her. You know, she didn't have that. Yeah, she had material things, but they didn't have his time, you know. And at 21, when I never forget, and this is what I talk to a lot of youth, you know, because too often this gangster life is just glamorized, you know, and only got to look at the music videos, movies, and YouTube and Instagram. It's glamorized, but it's so, you know, it's just not glamorous. You know, it's just selling you dreams that just quickly turn into nightmares. And I always talk about, you know, when the party's over, no one's around. You know, at 21, I fully understood. I got a call from my mum saying, don't go into the warehouse today. We've been raided. And I'll never forget that feeling. It was just one of immense fear. I was so scared of what's going to happen to us, especially my mum and my two younger sisters. I was worried about what's going to happen to them, because in that life, when the men are gone, you know, you're open. Your family becomes open. You know, my father was now going away. My uncle was already in Paremoreoma serving 15 years straight for the crimes that he committed. So we were alone, and that's what I was worried about. So I went right off the rails at 21. I quit uni. I quit the job that I had in a video shop, and I just went right off the rails. I ended up living in a tiny house in Mangere, Plumley Crez. Basically, what I was doing in boxing, for those of you who are familiar with my boxing career, which I couldn't really box that well, but I could talk it up, and I played a character in boxing, a bad guy. And this was the first time in my life I actually had to play this character, because I wasn't a bad guy. I'd been raised, you know, pretty well, not to go down that same path, but I went right up the rails, and I had to play a gangster, and I had to play this character of, you know, of this, just someone bad. And that wasn't me, but I had to do it because for me, all the men were gone in my family, but my mum and my two younger sisters were still there. So I had to be this person that I wasn't, to say, yeah, my dad, my uncle's gone, but I'm still here. Don't come near my mum because I'm still here. You won't get away with anything. So I ended up living in this tiny house and just being as bad as I could. I was being as bad as I could to build up this reputation as quickly as I could, so no one would come around us. So, you know, I was basically, I was selling drugs to survive and to just living a really bad lifestyle. You know, I was in this tiny house in Mangere and just doing outrageous things. And I never forget this night. I came home. I was extremely drunk and angry at the world. I was so upset with my father. I was just, to be honest, we haven't really healed and mended that relationship as good as it should be. But I was so angry with him at the time and what he had put us through again, especially my mum being put through this again. So I came home one night. I was really drunk from a party. I went into the kitchen. I opened the kitchen drawer. I pulled out a steak knife and I put it into my chest. And I guess it was a cry for help. But I just remember being so angry. And I remember waking up in the hospital at Middlemore and my mum's there crying. And I obviously felt really bad for my mum. And then later in that day, they brought my dad in with 2 prison guards. I didn't want to see him. I was still so angry with him. And when you do things like this, they send a shrink round to evaluate you, and I remember that. I'd actually done at uni 2 papers in psychology, psychology as a social science and psychology 101. So I could speak their language, So when she come around, I told her what she wanted to hear. And I remember I was out. I got let out of hospital and I was on the back doorstep of this tiny house in Mangere that I was living in. I remember it was a nice day. And I looked at the sky and I said, man, surely, I'm not religious, but I believe in God. And I said, surely, God, I'm meant for more. I didn't know what I was meant for, but I knew it wasn't this. I knew it wasn't selling drugs, fighting, drinking, doing drugs, and just being an idiot. I knew it wasn't that. I knew I was meant for more. But I always encourage our people to not dwell at the bottom, because that was me. I was at the bottom. I couldn't go any lower unless I was dead. I was at absolute rock bottom, staring at the sky, thinking, surely this can't be it. But I didn't stay down. That's what I encourage everyone out there. Don't stay down at the bottom and feel sorry for ourselves and wait for the system to help us. Because if we're waiting for the system to help us, we're going to be waiting all our lives. You've got to get up and you've got to work and do it for yourself. And that's what I did. From that doorstep of the tiny house in Mangere, I ended up playing rugby league in North Sydney Bears, playing rugby league for France, playing rugby in Singapore, made the Singapore selection team of all things. Then I was contracted to Manly Sea Eagles from that doorstep. From that doorstep, I ended up owning a whole bunch of businesses in Australia, doing really well. Now, you'd think that's the happy ending, right? Wrong. Unfortunately, life had a few more things to throw at me. Now I understand that life, I went through all that. So then I'm able to help even more people and impact even more people because I've been through so much, but that wasn't a happy ending for me, unfortunately. I'd owned all these businesses, and at this stage, my health went last. A lot of us that are out there, my health and me just was at the bottom of the list. Everything I was worried about was money, giving my kids material things and being financially secure, of course, and that still drives me now. But I was so focused on material things and being successful with money and business that I put my health last, and I started to get really massive. I was getting quite overweight. And it's always hard. I've talked about this thing 1,000 times, but it's always hard to relive these memories. I ended up making some really bad decisions in business, and I lost everything. I remember I was on the phone to a friend that I grew up with, David Higgins, really successful guy. And I remember being on the phone. He just said, just go to your accountant and that's it. Just hand it, just tell them. And I did. And, I should have just been happy to go broke and start again, because I've been broke before. It was nothing new to me. The struggle was not new to me, but it was my pride and the want to not have to have my children want for anything, and that's what I was driven by. So when I lost the businesses, I went to what I saw as a kid. And that's why all of us parents that are watching, you need to be so careful what your children see. They only eat and drink what we give and what we allow, and they see everything. And, you think about, they won't see it. We see everything. Your kids see everything that's happening. I saw everything that my parents and my uncle and all my family did when times got tough. When they were desperate, I saw what they did. And what they did was they stole, they robbed, they sold drugs. That's what they did. And so when I lost everything legitimately, that's what I went back to. And whatever I do, I apply my all. So, I wanted to be the best at what I was doing. Now, I'm not going to go into what I was doing because I've never been caught, and no one's going to catch me this way. But look, I did some bad things. And the worst thing about it was I did it in the name of my kids. Now I fully understood what my dad and everyone would say to me. We did this for you. Because that's what I did. I used my kids, justified everything I was doing for them when it was rubbish. Because all it did was take me away. All it did was take me away from my children. I ended up living in a whole other town away from my family. And in January 2014, which is not that long ago, I woke up, I went to the bathroom, I came out of the bathroom and I had a gun to my head. I was being robbed. And that's what happens when you live this life. And that's what I tell all the youth, that it's just, you only end up dead or in jail. For me, not to be dead or in jail is a miracle. And that's why I help the people the way I do. Because I believe that's what I'm meant to be here for, to help our people. Because that's the only reason I'm not dead or in jail. I came back here in February 2014 with not 1 cent, with my tail between my legs. The worst thing is I didn't lose, it was my fault. I didn't have my children, I didn't have my partner. I came here and I was living at my sister's house on my niece's bed on a single mattress I couldn't even fit on. And I was staring at the sky, staring at the roof of this room. And I had those same thoughts running through my head that I did all those years ago, back in the year 2000 on the doorstep of that tinny house. But at this now, it was even worse. When you come from nothing and then have it all and only to lose it all again, it's a very humbling experience. And, I just felt so bad about my life. And, Mike King often talks about it, the inner critic in all of us. And sometimes that voice is louder and louder and louder. And for me, what was going on in my head was, please excuse my language, is how did you manage to fuck things up so badly? That's what was going on. Idiots constantly going on. I just couldn't believe it. What the situation I found myself in, having to borrow money off my younger sister to have petrol to go to the shops, But everyone out there watching, again, I didn't stay on that bed feeling sorry for myself. I got up and I went for a walk. And that's how it started. That's how this journey for me started. I went for a walk and I ended up getting into boxing. Now, I actually moonlit as a boxer, not as a rugby league player. I wasn't a very good boxer, but I could talk it up. And the whole way that I got into boxing was a good friend of mine, David Higgins, who I grew up with. He was very worried about my health. And he threw me on one of Joseph Parker's shows to help motivate me to lose some weight. And, but I had to play this villain. I had to play this bad guy of boxing and just do heaps and heaps of outlandish stuff. I didn't care because I needed money. I had no other way of providing and sending money back home back to Australia for my family. So the whole thing with the boxing is that nobody liked me because the whole premise was, and just so you're familiar, the way that I got the name Brown Butterbean is the famous white boxer from back in the day called Butterbean. He was a big fat white guy and I was a big fat brown guy. So that's how they came up with the name, the Brown Butterbean. Who would have ever thought that we'd be sitting in a place called Butterbean Motivation that's literally impacting tens of thousands of our people in a positive way. The whole way that came about was I was boxing, being a character and everyone hated me. At the first weigh-in I went to the weigh-in at Joseph Parker versus Brian Minto. The scale said error. Everyone started laughing at me and I was just up there like this, going, yeah, I'm the man. No one can beat me. No one can beat the mighty Brown Butterbean. I'm calling out everyone. And we were fighting in South Auckland. So I called out South Auckland and people just went nuts. They put it on Crowd Goes Wild. They had it on the paper and people were just thinking, who is this fat guy saying he's the toughest man in New Zealand? And it just went crazy. So every fight I was on, getting more and more hate. And, what I want to emphasize here is to everyone watching is what I want to emphasize here is to everyone watching is, again, I could have used that as an excuse to stop. I could have used that as an excuse to stop. But all of that hate I was getting, now the worst hate message I ever got was, I'm going to send you rope to hang your family with. You know, that's at this point, I was now living in a community home on a mattress on the floor in Clendon. That's where I was, getting all of this hate, but I never used it as an excuse to stop. I used it as fuel and motivation to keep me going. You know, I said, I'll show you. I'll show you. And I always talk about having a purpose and a why. My why was I wanted my kids back. That was my driving force to keep getting up and ignoring the hate and keep going for walks and keep training and keep eating the best that I could. It's what motivated me to keep going. You know, every fight I was on, I was getting hate, but as I kept fighting, I'd be losing weight. And so all of a sudden I was starting to get messages about, man, how are you doing this? What's the secret? You know, everyone thinks there's a secret to this losing weight and being healthy and, you know, and being happy. There's no secret. So for everyone watching, I'm about to let you know what I did. So take this down. All I did, and if you think it's a secret, okay, this is a secret. I stopped eating rubbish every day. I stopped drinking fizzy drinks and I went for a walk. Those three things, that's it. I've lost 100 kilos. Not only have I lost 100 kilos, I've kept it off. You know, and I'm going to show you a photo after this. Losing the weight was the easy part. Actually keeping it off is the hardest part. And that's all I did. That's how I started. Stopped eating rubbish every single day. Stopped drinking fizzy drinks and I went for a walk. Those three things is what I did. As these messages kept coming in, I needed to start this group because publicly I was still being an idiot. I was still playing this bad guy and this, you know, outlandish character who talks about himself in the third person, who calls out and does whatever he wants. The butterbean goes where he wants and does what he wants. That's how I spoke. But I started a group on Facebook, which everyone can go and join. It's private, but everyone's welcome. It's called BBM Motivation. I started that so I could, it was like a place where I could be myself, you know, and share my journey. And it's now a place where everyone's there sharing their journey. And what it really is a place where you can be surrounded by positivity constantly. Because I understood that not everyone was around that in their everyday lives. So that's what the group is. Now that started with just me, one member. It's now over 15,000 members strong. It's a private group, but you know, anyone can join. I started our first boot camp out west. We started out west and it was just to help one of my father-in-law's mate. There was about 3 of us there. And I thought to myself, geez, we should see if anyone else wants to come, you know, in our group. So that's what we did. We started out south in a driveway in Papatoe. Me helping one person. Quickly outgrew that driveway. And now, a few years later, we're impacting literally tens of thousands of people, literally. You know, we have in our memberships about, I don't know, 10 or how many members do we have in BBM come to our boot camps? People that come every week, it's up to 1,000 people that are regularly coming between West, South, and Central. Everything we do is for free. I didn't want to have any obstacles for people to have to go around. Everything's for free. So with the work that we're doing now, we started a food bank out of level 4 last year. Now, the whole reason, I'll show you. Sorry, let's take you for a tour. Turn this camera around. So just here is a photo of before, after. Get your life back. This is our food bank. So keep in mind, this is an unfunded food bank, community food bank. Excuse I'm not sure how I'm going on time, but it would be good to, out there, that's actually our classroom, which we've turned into a storage. So Phil there, Phil's lost around 150 kilos. He's lost 150 kilos. So an amazing story. Here's the parcels getting ready for tomorrow. So I'll just so we started the food bank at a level 4 last year. The reason why we did it, because I understood the need. So we got a phone call. I got a phone call, so I'll just put this back in there. I got a phone call the day before level 4 last year from a social worker out west in West Auckland. Now, we all know how the system is so filled with bureaucracy and it's just hard to navigate at the best of times. This social worker out west knew of a family, a mum with 4 kids out south with no food and no money the day before level 4. Now, you can only imagine how that must have felt as a mum. We're looking at her kids going into level 4 and the unknown, the uncertainty, and just thinking, what? I don't know what's going to happen. How am I going to feed my children? This social worker group out west, their funding wouldn't cover a family out south, but they knew of them. So the lady rang me and I said, of course I'm going to help. So we went out, I met them, we got some shopping, a whole bunch of food for them. We took it out with the trolleys and the kids come running up saying, Mum, 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 we've got food now. And right there, that broke my heart. And right then I understood that we needed to do something about this, because anyone who was struggling pre-COVID is going to be drowning now. And see, this is the thing. The struggle that our people find ourselves in is not new. It's not just because of COVID. COVID has only amplified things, and it's shone a light. It's shone a light on the gap between the haves and the have-nots, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And COVID has accelerated that the time that it's taken. The gap's gone bigger and bigger and bigger. The people at the bottom are worse off, and that's what COVID's doing. We were already struggling, and COVID's only shone a light on it. So that's what we're doing now in our food bank. We're serving. Today we did 200 parcels for police. So who would ever thought? How amazing is that? The last time I had this many police at our place, I was getting raided. So it's crazy the way the world works. Here we are helping the police help the communities. What I understand now is the police are just another community group doing some great work out there in the community, just like we are. So I'm going to finish, team, with 4 steps that I use for everyone, not just with health, but with anything in life. You know, the first is just start. These are our pillars. You know, like te whare te pawha, these are our pillars. Of number 1, just starting. Don't overthink things, team. If you're out there thinking, I'm going to start tomorrow, don't wait. Start now. Start today. You know, I've visited so many people in hospital, our people, Māori and PI people in hospital. Some of them never made it out of hospital. We are overrepresented in all of the bad stats, not just health, but prisons. Suicide. Every single person I've visited in a hospital, they all had one thing in common. And now we all say it will never happen to us until it does. Every single person I've visited would give absolutely anything to have an opportunity, a chance to go back in time and start. So while you're here and you have an opportunity, don't waste it. Start. The second thing is staying consistent. Understanding that life is tough and can be so hard sometimes. At the moment, life can suck more than it's good, you know? And you will get told no, and you will get doors closed on you, you will get knocked down. But all you got to do is get up. Keep getting up. Keep getting up. Success is only around the corner. But how would you know if you're always giving up, if you're always staying down? You know, I think about this right now with what we're doing. This week alone, the last 4 weeks, we have fed 12,000 people. The last 4 weeks. What would happen if I'd given up? What would have happened to those people, to those 12,000 people? What would have happened to them? Who would have fed those kids if I'd just given up 7 years ago? Keep getting up. Whatever you do, whenever you're knocked down, what do? Get back up. And the third thing, there's only 4. Nice and simple. The third thing is surrounding yourself with good people. Surrounding yourself with people that want the best for you. This is what we've done in BBM. We're those positive people for others, much like a marae, like a village back in the islands, a community. That's what we do. It's really simple with this number 3. I'll just ask you a question. If you surround yourself with 5 idiots, what does that make you? Don't be the 6th idiot. Surround yourself with 5 successful people, 5 good people that only want the best for you. And I guarantee you will be the 6th. And the last point is no excuses. Now I believe in this so much, it's tattooed on my back. It could have very easily been a Mongol mob tattoo on my back, but it's not. It's a Butterbean motivation, no excuses patch. Now, it's so easy to say. Yeah, don't be the 6th idiot. It's so easy to say no excuses. It's a whole other thing to live by that mantra. Now, how do I live by that mantra? And how do I do everything that we do here in BBM is we have a very strong why. Our why in BBM is serving our people. So it doesn't matter how successful we get, we stay grounded because our why is our people. For me, my why was getting my kids back. I have all my children back now. I have a new son and a new wife. Life is good, you know. My why is still my family, being an example for them, my wife, but also for my people. So I want to encourage all of you to go home or after this, write down some really meaningful things to you. Write down a list of really meaningful things. And then from that, try choose one. It should be hard. That one thing, write it everywhere. Put it on a big piece of paper, put it on the roof of your room, on the wall, the first wall you look at, laminate it, put it in the shower, put it on your fridge, put it in your car. So anytime life gets tough, anytime the excuses are getting louder and louder, that voice, the inner critic in you is getting louder and louder, you can stare at that why on your wall and understand why you must keep going, why you can't give up. It won't always work because no one's perfect, but it should always get you back on the wagon. If it does not get you back on the wagon, it's not your why. Go back to your list and rethink it. So I hope that helps. Sorry, I went a bit all over the place, but I hope that helps. And I want you to understand that absolutely anything is possible, because if I can come back from what I have, if I've gone through what I have and be here now, helping all of our people, absolutely anyone can do it. So that's me. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.